If you're having trouble swallowing, it can really freak you out. Like if things are getting stuck and like it's not going down, like what do I even do right now? It can be quite scary. So in this video, I want to share my experience of what was going on when I was having trouble swallowing, which is also called dysphagia, and what appeared to be going on with me and the steps that I took to turn it around. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So just keep in mind that I'm not a doctor, I'm not giving you any medical advice, and I'm certainly not diagnosing you with dysphagia. I don't know you, I'm not a diagnoser. I just want to share the experience that I had and what seemed to be going on when I was really having a hard time swallowing, and it was really freaking me out when things were getting kind of stuck there a little bit. So it appears that a lot of people will have issues with both food and liquid, and it's more common for things like food or even like supplements or capsules or pills when people are swallowing those for those to get a little bit stuck. And there's a variety of issues that can cause this. Things like structural problems or things where like the esophagus has a narrowing or some type of scar tissue that creates like a blockage or a narrowing. So there's a variety of things that can happen. But it seems that most people with this issue are dealing with similar problems to what I was dealing with. And I had a variety of issues going on, but I kind of want to break this down and help you understand what was going on with me. And when we look at the associations between this dysphagia or difficulty swallowing, we see Barrett's esophagus a lot. And that's even one of the common symptoms. Oh, if you have Barrett's esophagus, you're going to see this trouble swallowing issue. And Barrett's esophagus is an issue where this esophagus lining here, the inside, those tissues, start to change and kind of morph into something else. And a lot of people's viewpoint is that they kind of change into more of like the structure that we see in this intestinal tract. And that kind of makes sense because the esophagus is not made to withstand acids, where once the food gets down into the stomach, we know the stomach makes hydrochloric acid or HCl, and that acidifies that food. So anything going down here is likely to be in a more acidic state than what it would be coming in. A cheeseburger is not really going to be in an acidic state, but once it gets through the stomach, then it could be. Now, once this food is acidified here and it leaves the stomach, the gallbladder is supposed to squirt this alkaline bile down that helps neutralize those acids. We have some bicarb come out of the pancreas that helps neutralize those acids. So it shouldn't be as acidic by the time it gets through this intestinal tract, but it's still more of an acidic state than it would be going down the esophagus. So it makes sense that the esophagus is not really built to withstand acid. And we also see an association between Barrett's esophagus and acid reflux. So acid reflux is when this stomach acid is coming back up the esophagus and it burns us. And that burning acid in the esophagus creates a lot of inflammation and can create damage to the lining in that esophagus. And a lot of people see this with things like silent reflux too. And this is just an opinion, but if the body is changing the structure of this lining because it's getting hammered by this acid all the time when this reflux is coming back up, it makes sense that it would want to change that lining because this stomach acid is made to break down protein. Well, guess what your esophagus is made of? Yeah, it's protein. So the body would want to try to protect that instead of having it just be digested and digest a hole right through your esophagus, right? So it makes sense that maybe the body would change the structure of this lining to protect it from being damaged. So the problem is that when this structure changes, now this acid coming back up, a person might not feel it. That might be the reason that this reflux can be silent. A person doesn't really feel the heartburn anymore because these tissues have changed in order to protect those tissues. The problem is the esophagus lining has this structure that kind of pushes all the food down, it pushes all the water down, it contracts to kind of push things down. And it appears that when this lining is altered, that it doesn't have the ability to do that as well. And that might be part of the problem that's keeping the food or water or whatever it is from going down and being pushed down like it should. So my reflux was so bad that it was coming back up and burning my vocal cords to the point where I lost my voice for 8 years. I was not able to talk for 8 years. We'll put a link in the description below on the video on how I lost my voice for 8 years if you want to understand that a little bit better. But if it was coming up and damaging my vocal cords, then certainly it's passing all of this tissues and all this lining as well. And so I started over time having problems where I could not swallow things. I couldn't swallow pills, and a lot of types of foods would get just kind of stuck there. And that was really scary for me. But what I did is I fixed the underlying cause of my acid reflux. And for a lot of people, and I'll put some links in the description below to some studies that kind of explain this, but for some people, acid reflux is actually caused by not having enough stomach acid. It's not caused by having too much stomach acid like a lot of advertisers want us to believe. For a lot, it's caused by not having enough, because there's a valve at the bottom of the esophagus called the lower esophageal sphincter that when the food comes in, it opens up so the food can get into the stomach. And then once that food starts to acidify, that lower esophageal sphincter closes so that the acid doesn't come back up and burn us. The thing is that that valve is triggered by stomach acid. So if someone isn't making enough stomach acid, which is really common today, then they only have a small amount of acid. So they don't have enough to trigger that valve to close, but the small amount they have is going to come back up and really burn us. There also seems to be some correlations here between hiatal hernias and things like acid reflux and Barrett's esophagus and even trouble swallowing. And a hiatal hernia kind of happens where the stomach gets kind of pulled up through the diaphragm. It gets a little bit jacked up, and then that LES valve doesn't close properly, so then that acid is going to come back up and burn us. And we'll put a link in the description below for our video on understanding hiatal hernias, and that was part of the problem for me. And if someone has a hiatal hernia that's kind of jacking up that LES valve a little bit, it also has the ability to allow food or supplements and things like that to get stuck there. Not just where it's not getting pushed down the esophagus, but it can get stuck in that jacked up LES valve, and I would have things that would really get stuck. And I thought that I'm dying. This is what it's like to die, is just because I can't get these things to go down. And when I fixed my hiatal hernia, then not only did that also improve the acid reflux for me, but I also stopped having the things get stuck a little bit lower down. So that was really nice. It's good when you can correct a hiatal hernia. I also had a bacterial overgrowth in the stomach. You know, a lot of people deal with H. pylori, and there's other things that can get in the stomach and kind of create trouble. And a lot of the waste product from a lot of these bacteria is alkaline. And so when they're in their stomach and setting up camp and pooping it up real nice, then they make this stomach environment more alkaline, so it's not acidic enough to trigger that valve to close. And they also create a lot of gas, which creates pressure in the stomach that can push things back up. That pressure pushes things back up and can magnify that reflux issue. So that was something else that I was dealing with that was creating that reflux for me as well. And I also had a sinus infection. And I'll put a link in the description below showing some correlations between sinus problems and a lot of these reflux type issues. Because I had this infection up in my sinuses, and these sinuses go way up in here. There's all kinds of pockets and places where things can hide behind biofilms. And I thought that I would try to kill them off, but then I would fix these things where I would help my stomach acidify correctly again after wiping out this bacteria, and it would fix all of the reflux and all the swallowing issues, and then a few months later it would come back. And it's because I had this infection in my sinuses that was basically just feeding down into my stomach every day. So anytime I stopped taking steps to wipe out all these bad guys in my stomach, it would just come right back, and I would create all the same problems again. So you can see I had a number of things going on that I had to correct a variety of issues to really fix it for me. Not everybody's going to have that circumstance. They might just have a hiatal hernia or just have a bacterial overgrowth, or a lot of people might just not be making enough hydrochloric acid for a wide variety of reasons. Now, that doesn't mean that if you have these problems and you fix them that you're not going to have any more trouble swallowing. I didn't. It improved for me. I've also heard from other clients and anecdotal stories from comments from people saying that it improved for them when they fixed their reflux issues. But keep in mind that this is just one possible underlying cause for having troubles swallowing. So if this is a problem for you, there's tests that you can ask your doctor to run to see, how are things going down. They can do an upper endoscopy. They can do these other tests that might not be as pleasant, but you can still get some answers of what's going on. And it's also good to find out, do I have some type of hiatal hernia issue? You can find a chiropractor locally. A lot of chiropractors are good at understanding, is there a hernia there? You can also have your doctor check things out. You could look to see, do I have some type of bacterial overgrowth in the stomach that might be creating some reflux issues that are causing trouble for me? And then you just want to see, do I have other digestive malfunctions? Maybe I'm not making enough stomach acid that allows this triggered valve to close the way that it's supposed to close. So you can see there really isn't one answer for this because there can be a variety of issues going on. But this is a lot for you to investigate. This can give you some homework. And if you want to understand the acid reflux issue a little bit better, jump over right now and check out our video on why do I have acid reflux, and that might give you some more insights. I hope this helps.